Talab, we're really excited. We have Kate Forth with us, and so welcome, Kate, and both Talat and myself are super excited about this. But before we get into the discussion, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, for the last 25 years, I've been working as a coach, and I have various hats that I wear. In the business and organizational work, I work very much with leaders. I've worked with individuals and groups around the area of impact and influence. But I would have to say the overriding thing that I'm interested in is working with professionals to help them to maximize their professional potential. So sometimes people are in a role and they're finding that they're getting stuck in old patterns, beliefs, that don't really work. They're finding that there's not always an alignment between what they personally feel and what their own values are, or and the organizational values, for example, or somebody who's just going, for some reason, I don't have confidence in my role. But building self-awareness, sometimes people don't have the confidence and they believe that they don't have the potential to move forward in their role. Or perhaps they just don't have an awareness of how they're coming across, in as much as people might be scared of them. They wield so much power that they have no idea that other people feel silent around them. So that's really important, that area of self-awareness and also awareness of the others that they're working with. It's what I call building skillful relationship, because whatever I do does have an impact on quite a wide network.
Really interesting, Kate. And this sounds so much to me like EQ, right? So your emotional intelligence really around being aware of yourself, so your self-awareness, and then the impact you have on others, and then really reading their communication and how they're coming across, kind of, and feeding off that. Our topic today is about influence and communication. So if somebody wants to influence positively in an organization at whatever, wherever they are in the organization at whatever level, what are some of the things they should be thinking about or looking at when wanting to create an impact?
I think what you've just said there, Talat, is terribly important, because EQ is part of this. Is about being able to read a group, or read. I'm actually at the moment more and more we're working on a flat screen, and how on earth do we read what is coming through? And the other thing I would add to the EQ bit is the PQ, if you like. We're going to use those terms: physical intelligence, about what do I do in terms of bringing my body and my voice to the situation. And I think that it's incredibly complex, but also on one level incredibly simple, because obviously I am having an impact right now, whether I like it or not. The way I'm coming across is creating an atmosphere with you and potentially a wider audience. And I'm reading something because I'm seeing some nodding. So I'm kind of going, right, maybe that's telling me to continue, so I'll continue. But if I don't have an awareness of that and I just talk as if there's nobody there, and you probably even notice now there's a completely different thing happening, you're probably not breathing the way that you were just now, and you're probably going, I wish you'd shut up and give you a moment to breathe. So that's the impact. And the question I'm going to ask you in a moment is thinking about the people that have in your life that have impacted on you. It creates a feeling. And the thing is, the impact that I have, if I'm not aware of it, I don't know what people are carrying away in their memories after that interaction with me. We can talk about image in terms of how we look, and that's terribly important. But there's the subtlety in terms of, what do people feel about me when I'm not in the room? What do people think about me? What do they hear? What did they hear? If you think about teachers that you had at school, and there will be some that you really, and I noticed a bit of a smile there, Talat, so I'm curious, what is it that you carry away from some of your best teachers? Is it their tone of voice? Is it what they said? Maybe we can unpack that. What are some of the things that you remember?
And I think that's something, in fact, why I was smiling is because Faria and I actually chatted about this before you came online. And we were talking about influencers, and I was like, you go back to school and you had teachers that either positively or negatively influenced you, and I can go back and I remember on my fingertips, the one teacher, my maths teacher, negatively influenced me, and she's made me afraid of maths and numbers for all my life because of that experience. I've been fearful of numbers and finance and all of that. It's always been a struggle for me because I think it goes back to that.
And I think, excuse me, I'm excited now, so I don't want to interrupt. Please carry on.
No. I was going to say, Fariha, for example, I'm sure you can think of a teacher that either positively or negatively impacted you.
I think I was thinking more positive. And one of the things you mentioned, Kate, was and Talat, is the body language, the openness and the kindness that was sort of exuded through that. And then the tone, I think the language, the words came much later. So it was the presence in the class that I remember.
Okay. So there's something here about, if my intention is to help you learn and make you feel good about learning, that will affect how I move my body, my voice, and the words I choose. It's like we work as a whole system, and our brain and our body and our hearts and our minds all tend to work together. And if I'm not thinking about the other person, I'm just thinking about myself, that will have an impact. So Talat, when it comes back to the how, I think there's two bits here. I was thinking about this last night about impact and influence, and are they the same thing? And I think impact is how we feel and what we remember, and the influence is what happened as a result. So I'm thinking about with you, Talat, with your teacher, the impact was negative, and how they influenced you is quite profound around maths.
Yes.
So this is what's interesting, is we often don't realize that it's not just how we come across, but the question is, what do people do next as a result of us being in that space?
Yeah.
So Talat, coming back to your question about what can we do to create impact, is there a particular context you might have in mind, or a particular person that you're asking on behalf of?
I think, Kate, I was just, very interesting what you said, say about the two cleaners, or about, I think what Fariha and I want to try and get across to people is you need to take the responsibility and the ownership of creating that impact or influence. I know there's lots around inclusivity and inclusive behavior, and leaders should be calling out the quieter ones to the table and should be including them. But quite honestly and practically in life, that doesn't really happen so much. Okay, so what are you doing to project yourself to influence your colleagues and your manager? That's what I think we're trying to get across to people, is take ownership.
Yes,
and I just, if I may, just add a little bit of a layer, and that's probably my perception, and because most of our audience is from Pakistan. So one thing we notice that in most of us, majority of us, we don't have like formal presentation and that kind of schooling. So the schooling system is very different. So as a result, when you enter the job market, that's when you're first time exposed. Of course, there's always a minority. There are obviously certain groups who have better exposure, but I'm saying the majority, right? So when you enter the workforce, how do you then start learning about the influence and impact?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where, and I totally take on what you've just said, Talat, about inclusivity, because there are, glass ceilings, sometimes they're heavy concrete ceilings, and to say, it's all up to the individual is a bit unfair, and at the same time is like, what can we do, bearing in mind that these are the conditions and we need to change them, but this is what we've got right now. And I'm thinking, for example, about, and this is again where self-belief and confidence can come into it, but some of the way to work could be to go, well, look, I may not have a great deal of power in this organization. I might be starting out. I've worked with a lot of people who are quite young, and they're seen as young, or sometimes they're not young, but they come across as young because of how they wear their bodies. And there's something that you can do something about, is it, if I show you the difference, if I start to sit back, you probably notice there's something in my tone, like, I don't know, what are you hearing?
Yes, see?
And then when I sit more tall, there's a difference that I can make, and I've got the potential then to hold the space, calling that hold the space. But in the 21st century, we have to use our voices. We have to think strategically in a very different way. So sometimes when we're anxious, for example, we go into what I call that fight or flight, and we freeze. and that doesn't serve us because it actually stops us from breathing effectively for speech. So there's something there about